The Initiation of Tuan. I'm standing at a bus stop in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, on the black end of town. It's a hot but overcast summer day. To my left is a young man mesmerized by his cell phone. He laughs out loud periodically while staring into its depths. Then his thumbs fly like hummingbird wings over the keyboard. He is dressed like all the other young men around here, in the newest iteration of distressed jeans, with stark white tennis shoes and a shirt with a sports logo emblazoned across the front. I notice him only because a little boy wearing an almost identical outfit in miniature is circling around and around his feet like a toy train. The toddler, who is doing all the things toddlers do with their newly found feet, pitches forward with full force onto the sidewalk, enormous toddler head first. The women around me gasp, and so do I. Some of them take halting steps toward the boy. Pearls are clutched while we wait for the young man, who I assume is the boy's father, to pick up the boy and tend to him. The boy's wails are high-pitched and ear-splitting. The child's name is Tuan. "Shake it off, Tuan," the young father says, glancing briefly down at the boy and then turning back to his phone. Tuan sits down on the sidewalk only to howl more loudly. The women around me shift their eyes from the child to the father and back again. Their worried looks are digging deep creases between their brows. They exchange disapproving glances with one another. The boy's screams are now rattling his voice box, and his mouth is open so wide that his little face appears to be tearing itself apart. As I watch the boy sitting on the sidewalk, I try to remember what real crying feels like. I can't. I can only remember the tactics I employed to try to suppress it. Tuan's father picks the boy up off the ground and places him on the bus stop bench before turning back to the flickering lights inside his phone. Tuan has no interest in shaking it off. "Be a man, Tuan," the boy's father says, out of the corner of his mouth, eyes steady on the phone. Tuan has no interest in being a man, and his screaming continues. Tuan's father kneels down, grips the boy by the shoulders, and looks him straight in the eyes. "Stop crying, Tuan. Be a man." When I was a boy, I used to sit on the back steps of our house after an ass whooping because afterward I was always commanded not to leave our yard. My father would wander out after a long while with his head down and the same hands he'd used to just whoop my ass shoved deeply into his pockets. Instead of letting the screen door slam as he usually did, he would close it carefully. He knew he had let his temper get the best of him, and so he would come out, weighed down by a remorse he was unable to express with words. He'd just sit down next to me and quietly look off into the distance. He'd fish out his packet of Winstons, place one between his lips, use both hands on his lighter to light it, and exhale a thick cloud of ivory smoke. For a little while, he and I would share a silence that was occasionally broken by my hiccuping sobs and sharp intakes of air. Sometimes he would come out bearing gifts, a popsicle or a candy bar that he'd hand me wordlessly while still looking out on the backyard. And we'd sit there until he couldn't take listening to my sopping wet whimpering any longer, and he'd command me suddenly, as if he'd just woken out of a dream, "Stop crying. You done cried enough. Stop crying right now." I would stop immediately. As Tuan's father's voice becomes louder, demanding that the boy stop crying, all I want to do is pick the boy up and make sure he's all right. I can't explain it. Something to do with his tiny shoulders being held in a vice-like grip by the very person he needs tenderness from in this moment. Something about the unaddressed ache. And I realize that this, what I'm witnessing, is the playing out of one of the very conditions that have dogged my entire existence. This being a man to the exclusion of all other things. As Tuan's father publicly chastises him for his tears, I remember how my own tears were seen as an affront. I remember how my own father looked at me as if I was leaking gasoline and about to set the whole concept of black manhood on fire. Stop crying. Be a man. My father's beatings were like lightning strikes, powerful, fast, and unpredictable. He held his anger so tightly that when it finally overtook him, the force was bone-shaking. He punched me like I was a grown-ass man. He went blind with rage and just punched with all the strength of a steel worker. It never took more than one to lay me on my back, windless. Then he would dare me to get up. I never did. When he punched me in the stomach, my flesh engulfed his fist. When he caught me in the chest, I could swear I heard ribs crack. His punches to my head rocked it back on my shoulders so violently that I momentarily lost vision in one eye. This is how he meted out punishment for the offenses of not listening to him, for talking too slick, or for acting like a girl.